The EP Podcast. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at theeppodcast.com.
We're talking Evergreen Park Food Pantry at a time of the year you wouldn't expect us to, and we're checking in with a podcast club over at Central Middle School. But before I get into this show, real quick, I have to admit a mistake on last week's episode. Most of you did not hear it because the morning the episode came out, somebody texted me and said, "Hey, you said that wrong." And I got in and fixed it. But some of you in the early morning last Tuesday heard the mistake. We had Ken and Amy Kazin in here from Evergreen Park Community High School. Ken, band director over there for 38 years. It's a great interview. If you missed it, it's on demand. Everywhere podcasts can be found and always at theeppodcast.com. And everything's fine with the interview. But sometimes I record other parts of the show separately, like this opening part. And I did it really late at night on Monday. I had a bunch of stuff going on. My daughter was in from school. I almost actually forgot to do it, so I was doing it very late right before I went to bed. And in that intro, I called Ken Mitch Kazin. Now, who's Mitch Kazin? He's an evil professor from when I went to the University of Illinois who made me buy an $80 textbook and then we never used it, just because he wanted to rip off college kids. And he vexed me so much nearly 3 decades ago that his name popped into my head. So to review, Ken Kazin, great band director, served this community 38 years over at Evergreen Park Community High School, good guy. Mitch Kazin, jump off a bridge for making me buy that book and still being in my head 3 decades later. Sorry, Ken. This episode of the EP Podcast brought to you by the First National Bank of Evergreen Park, investing in your EP community. After all, they love this area as much as you do. Plus, with their Total Access checking account, you get free ATMs nationwide and a $300 bonus with qualifying activities. Paired with mobile banking tools and award-winning customer service, switching to a true community bank has never been easier. Start banking locally today. Get in there, that iconic building at 95th and Pulaski. The First National Bank of Evergreen Park, member FDIC. Joining me down here on the EP Podcast, we have some special guests. Some are returning. I don't know if Beth is... Have you been down here to the bar yet, Beth Novotney?
I have never been down to the bar. I've only met you at the farmer's market a couple years ago.
Only at the farmer's market, okay? But Beth is involved along with Mark Phelan, one of your village trustees, Carol Kyle, one of your village trustees, but also these three are the ones that are running the Village Pantry. And the food pantry here in Evergreen Park is such a big deal. We've had folks on before to talk about it. And one of the things I always find very interesting is that this food pantry services all Evergreen Park residents, but also does its absolute best to not turn anybody away. If somebody is in need, they are there for them. We've seen them go through COVID. We've seen them go through rough times where there's been increases where families are having a hard time putting food on the table. I'll give your titles that I have here for the actual food pantry. Mark Phelan is the manager of the pantry. Carol Kyle is the vice president of pantry of the Village Pantry Coalition, and Beth, you are the president of the Village Pantry Coalition. So are you the boss here? Do you run this?
I oversee the operations of the pantry. I work with Mark on a daily basis weekly basis. Mark is at the pantry, organizing the volunteers, assisting with the order placement, the food placement, the deliveries, making sure the volunteers are all there, doing extra shopping for the non-perishable foods that we may need for the weekly distribution.
Because it's not all cans that people are dropping off, right? I mean, is that correct, Carol? It's not all cans and like the non-perishables. There are purchases that you guys make and you bring into the pantry because I mean, there's fresh food as well. I know you got freezers and things like that.
Yes, there is fresh food. But Mark goes to the store on a weekly basis if we don't get enough from the Chicago Food Depository.
You're the shopper.
He's the shopper.
I'm the shopper. I go to Meijer each week. We supply the people with fresh eggs every week, milk and bread. So those are things that we can't always get from the Chicago Food Depository.
Oh gosh, the eggs have to be a big deal right now.
They are.
I see some of these cartons going for $10.
It's an expensive item, and the ladies have yelled at me for buying them, but people are used to getting what they get, and we try not to skimp on anything. When the people come in on a Friday to get a delivery to get their food, they get a bag, a box, and also a bag of meat. So typically it's supposed to feed a family of 4 for a week, and it's a lot of food.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you give out a lot. I've seen it before. I've gone over to your location. What's the location again?
2700 West 98th Place.
Okay.
An old firehouse.
Yes, I was just about to say that. That's an old firehouse there. So I've been there before. I've seen pickup, and it seems like that they get a lot. They can come every week. Is that how that works, or is it every month?
If they're in need of food, we tell them they can come every week. If they're from Evergreen Park, since we get deliveries from the Chicago Food Depository once a month, we don't turn anyone away. If someone from Chicago comes there, they can come there once a year. So we're always putting people down in the computer so we know that they've been there more than once a year. But
so if there's somebody in an emergency in Chicago, you take care of them. Like an emergency person's got an emergency once a year thing.
We take care of everyone. I never turn anyone away.
Right.
Never do.
And then we try to give them the resources to find a pantry in their area so that they can continue to get food from a food pantry if they need it.
What qualifies somebody to use the pantry? I believe I've asked this before, but it was probably a couple years ago.
They're not vetted like we vet people, in other things that we give out, like if we pay for someone's water bill or a rent or something like that. But it's just being honest, and you can tell by some of the cars that people drive in that they are in need. So we're not supposed to judge, so we don't. And if they need food, we give it to them.
Yeah, I know that Carol and Mark have been involved in this for a long time. When did you start, Carol?
I started when I retired from teaching in 2012.
That's a long time to be doing it.
It is, and I've seen a lot of changes. And as Mark said, what we give to them on a weekly basis, when I started in 2012, they got one box. And the box was according to the size of the family. We looked at that, we reviewed that, and decided the way that we are doing it really gives them a lot more food. They get a box of food that is packed by 2 volunteers, weekly volunteers, and then we get a bag. They get a bag of cans, and then as Mark said, that we get the frozen food. And there's always extras. If there aren't extras from the food depository, there are wonderful people from the village that just stop by, and they'll be going through Myers and they'll see sugar cereal, and they know we like to give sugar cereal to the families that have children. Who doesn't want Cocoa Puffs to have chocolate milk at the end of the day, right? I mean, how cool is that? We don't always get those things from the food depository. So we've got people that just stop, that live in Evergreen Park, know the need, what the kids like. They stop and talk to us, and they also get that. In 2012, they got one box of food.
Now it's a lot more. That's good. That shows that you guys are stretching your dollar as much as possible. Mark, how long have you been doing it?
I've been doing it, I think, since about 2006 or 7. I can't really remember, but I
mean, you volunteer for so many different things, and I mean,
Right.
on top of that, we've mentioned it before. You're a deacon over at Redeemer as well. Like, you give an awful lot of your time. Well, where does that come from? Is that something that was instilled as a child, or where does that come from?
Yeah, as a child, my parents were always have us involved in charitable organizations, and when my children were little, I used to bring them to soup kitchens and the pantry and other places, and try to teach them when they're young that giving makes them feel good. I remember when Katrina happened, and I went to Sam's Club and got a giant load of Similac and diapers, and knew a guy who was taking a truck down there to New Orleans, and my son was with me. He was about 8 years old, and he said, "Dad, this chill work is fun," and it is fun. If you teach kids at a young age that to give is a fun thing, because we're all retired people and we're older, but we're always laughing and having fun when we're doing it. And if you teach them that it's fun to do that, maybe they'll do that the rest of their life. We're hoping.
Give back.
You get a lot of volunteers too. I mean, how are you doing on volunteers? I know that you get a lot of high school students that will come over there and work at the pantry.
Well, we have at least 10 volunteers on a weekly basis that are there, and they're all individual jobs.
Mm-hmm.
We also are blessed by having a group of Aero students that it comes from a transition program. It's the older students that either are in school or not. that come on a weekly basis, not only on Friday to hand out food, but on Thursdays when Mark
To pack
and
food.
a lot of volunteers are there packing. The volunteers come on a Thursday and pack the food. They also receive the deliveries, and then on Friday come back on Fridays to help distribute the food. We have a lot of volunteers, and we have a lot of kids come in for the special things, and if they're service hours, but they're in school during the school hours that we really need them.
Yeah.
But we're very fortunate with the number that we have, and we're always getting phone calls if we can have more, and we try and do the best we can as far as
Both the,
getting volunteers.
I'm sorry, all the elementary schools in Evergreen have
Right.
been great. The public school, the high school, they run drives all the time. They send some of their students over to work. Most Holy Redeemer runs a big drive at Thanksgiving.
We have college students that still come back.
you know, and the kids come over and help stock the shelves and learn all about it, and that's part of the thing of teaching them that it's a fun thing to do charitable work, and hoping they'll come back. And this community really supports this organization. That's what makes
Yes,
it
we're very
so
thankful.
successful, I think.
And it's not just food. You mentioned it earlier on while we were sitting here talking that, like, you know, there's also financial assistance. Tell me a little bit about that, because I always assumed it was just a food pantry. And I kind of caught that when you were saying it. So how does that work?
Well, I'll let Beth talk about that, but Little Company Mary had a program of helping people who are in dire need in Evergreen Park. And when they became with OSF, they kind of not threw it on to us, but asked us to take it on. So we've taken it on to help people who are in dire need of some assistance.
So it kind of became two organizations into one.
Yeah.
And Sister Margaret Christina, who has passed away, is the one that was responsible for starting it many years ago at Little Company.
Okay.
And then Beth, being the director of the Offices of Citizen Services, is like the big umbrella.
My favorite thing is the look on Beth's face. She's like, now I have to talk.
Now she, and the
He's
very
like, I was just going to sit here between these two and just be quiet and pretend I wasn't on the
fight for the
podcast.
floor.
Exactly.
Tell me a little bit about it,
Exactly.
Beth, if you can.
So the Village Pantry merged with Little Company Mary and the Healthier Evergreens back in 2021, and they provide financial assistance to families that live in Evergreen that have hardships. It's a once-in-a-lifetime type of emergency assistance based on the family's needs. Every case is different, so I typically have a family come in and sit down with me and kind of find out what's going on. Do they need assistance with? What happened? You know, is it a loss of a job? Unemployment ran out? I had a house fire. Had major car repairs and needed the car repaired to get to work. And part of my role with the Office of Citizen Services is I work with other organizations. We have the Salvation Army satellite there. We partner with CETA and the LAHI program, Night Corps Share, all of those. So I can really sit down and figure out what the family's needs are and what programs will serve them best based on whether it's a lower income, fixed income senior that needs assistance, or whether it's somebody that lost their job or had major medical expenses and just really struggling. And then I will write up a proposal and take it to the board and say, hey, can we help this family with their water bill or their gas bill or their gas and water bill or a mortgage or a rent payment. And so we have helped a lot of families in Evergreen through that funding from a Healthier Evergreens, which is now merged with our food pantry.
That's a big deal. I mean, because that's the thing. I mean, it's a big deal that you're able to feed, but sometimes then it doesn't. If they're already standing there looking for food, they probably have some other problem that they're dealing with as well. So it's a real total care kind of package. It's really interesting to hear that you guys are doing that as well. If somebody wants to help out, I mean, and they can't get over there and put things on the shelves and volunteer, how do people do this? Is what's the best way? Is there a list someplace where they can figure out what they should bring in? Are there drop boxes? Do they wait for a drive? What are you guys looking for the most right now?
We have a list on our website of typical foods that we take in. So there's a long list there of things that we run out of or things that we need on a weekly basis. And then also...
Do you have the website off the top of your head? Or do you just go to the Village website? And
there's a link on the Village webpage that they can link to. But there's also the link, it's EP Food Pantry.
Okay, that's a good one.
Or just eppantry.org.
eppantry.org.
Yeah.
Okay, go to eppantry.org.
We just revised all of
Look at
this.
that. Yeah, that's fresh, shiny, and new right there.
And then also, if you want to make a donation, a monetary donation, typically at Christmas time we get donations, and Thanksgiving time sometimes. You just write a check to Village Pantry Coalition, drop it off at OCS, and we put the money to good use.
That gives Mark more money when he goes to the store.
There you go.
When you're doing this, are you doing this on your own when you're going there? Are you walking around pulling a card and pushing a card?
He brings his bags to Aldi's.
I push 3 carts.
You do 3 carts
I
at
do 3
once? How are
carts,
you doing
yeah.
3 carts at? I
Well,
don't know
I
how
have to
you
go.
can do that.
I have to go back for the one, but I can push 2 carts.
Wow!
But it's an adventure every Thursday.
When you come walking in the door, do they just kind of go, "Oh, there he is. He's gonna
There's
clean us out." Yeah.
60 eggs, 60 bread, 60 milk every Thursday. They know. They see me coming.
One of the things that I want to give you guys a chance to confirm, because it's something I've heard before. People always think there's certain times of the year where they should do this, right? Like they think the holidays they should do it, but really this time of year is important because most people aren't paying attention to giving, and this is where you probably need the most push, right?
It is really funny that at Thanksgiving, most people think that's the only time people are hungry, but people are hungry every day of the year, and our shelves are always overflowing at Thanksgiving time, and we're so thankful for it. But people are always hungry. People are always in need. Summertime, wintertime, it doesn't matter. They're always in need. So we appreciate anyone who does a food drive or drops off some food at our pantry. We love the people who are so generous.
And
Awesome.
currently, the youth department is running a food drive.
Okay. They're currently doing something. I would imagine you go see it, drop it off
I
over
think
at the...
Paisha mentioned it in your last
Yes,
podcast.
I'm sure
Yes.
she did. I'm sure she did. Okay, so just a recap for everybody. Food pickup is on Fridays, 9:30 until noon. You guys correct me if I get any of this wrong, okay? And then if they want to get any information, see a list of things that the food pantry needs, if you want to do that, go to eppantry.org. And there's also a phone number, 708-422-8776. Mark Phelan, Carol Kyle, 2 of your wonderful village trustees that have been serving the village for a long time. Beth Novotney, who I think did pretty well here, avoiding the microphone as much as possible. She only had to answer a couple of questions. I give her a hard time because I go out every summer when the farmers market's going on, and that's something that you're heavily involved in. And I always look at you and I go, "You want to come on the show?"
Run fast enough.
Good job.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you.
Building relationships, supporting the community, and service. These are the things that Country Financial stands for. They're more than just an office you may pass by as you drive through Evergreen Park. They're neighbors who lend a helping hand and support the fabric of your community, including charitable organizations, sports, financial education, and civic organizations. And since Country is already your neighbor, they want to get together and chat. Call your local Country Financial representative, Mike Thauer, today at 708-425-1559 to talk about the things that are important to you and how he can help you protect them. It is now time for your EP podcast, Word on the Street, brought to you by Spoken Vine Wine Bar and Bottle Shop, northeast corner of 95th and Kedzie. I'm a regular. I love that place. So many wines to choose from. They got a couple of Shiraz there now from Australia. I've been begging for that. They finally got a few of them in. Now my world is complete. It's also complete because I finally tried the chicken pita plate there. Put that in your rotation. Spectacular. The menu's great, the wines are plenty, and if you find something you like, you get to bring it home with you. See more at SpokenVineWines.com. Coming up on March the 30th, the Evergreen Park Public Library is doing an afternoon of jazz at the library with James Kalen and his trio. There are limited seats for this thing. Seriously, if you don't get to evergreenparklibrary.org soon and register, you're going to have to bribe Frank Murray to sneak you in the back like a groupie, which could be fun. It all kicks off on Sunday the 30th at 2:30 p.m. The Evergreen Park Police Department is holding 2 T-level clinics for Kids Golf Foundation this summer, and the clinics are offered for free to boys and girls of the Village, ages 8 to 13. No non-residents. Sorry, you're out. Get to evergreenpark-ill.com for more information. The Village is hiring several different positions: full-time seasonal maintenance worker, full-day camp counselor, part-time seasonal mini-day camp counselor, and they're also looking for a full-time seasonal summer day camp manager. If you like kids, there's 3 jobs open. If you don't like kids, there's 1. And after all the St. Patrick's Day festivities, if you have somebody that wants to learn how to Irish dance, Mary McQuillan, Midwest champion dancer of Blackbird Academy, is going to be teaching it. $100 for a 10-week session. That's a deal. It's going to be at the Community Center, 3450 West 97th Street, kicking off on April the 3rd and going every Thursday from 5:45 to 6:15 p.m. More information, call 708-229-3373. Sitting down here at the 9-foot homemade oak bar, I have a 6th grade social studies teacher, Charlie Piermattei. He's also the guy who's running a podcast club over at Central Middle School here in Evergreen Park. How are you, Charlie?
I'm great, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. I'm interested in this. All right. I mean, I'm always interested in what's going on over at the schools. I love interacting with the kids. We've already been chatting here. Like, I think down the line here, we're going to have to do something with the podcast club because I am Evergreen Park's podcaster. I don't know if you've heard this. Okay, we're coming up on 8 years here now in Evergreen, and it's been a journey. But now we're in that fun zone where we're established. People are listening to it. They're watching the clips and things like that. The business has grown into multiple podcasts and multiple mediums, and this is all I do now for a living. And I'm going to be teaching at Moraine Valley this summer, so I'm interested in what you're doing because I have never taught a class. You're a teacher. I know podcasting. You're starting off. I think we can help each other. What do you think?
That sounds great. Yeah,
I think you and I can work well with each other.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Congratulations on 8 years coming up and all your success that came from it. That's quite a benchmark. So
thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm curious as to how the podcast club comes about over at Central because I've noticed it. I've noticed that there's more podcast conferences. So like adults want to talk about it and look into the medium. And I was asked to be at Chicago Podcast Day about a year or two ago. And I was just one speaker, but my symposium was the most crowded. And it was because I was talking about how do you make money doing it. Everybody's looking at this now as I could have a career and work for myself if I can figure out how to do it. And my theory with kids is, because I've got one that's 9 years old and I've got 2 that are teenagers. My theory with kids is this group right now and the kids that you're teaching, they watch an awful lot of YouTube channels. They see an awful lot of creators. And I've seen some of these videos. Some of these people are terrible at this, and yet they've got millions of people watching their stuff. So the kids are like, I'm going to do that. Is that where this comes from, the interest, do you think?
Yeah, the interest is definitely coming from what you had mentioned. I think we're also that podcasts are this generation's source of information. I think we're moving past traditional news media. I think we're moving past televised news and radio news. And I think now the accessibility, as you mentioned, for people to get into podcasting is what's driving a lot of that interest from younger demographics.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you're 6th grade teacher. Like you're in the middle school doing this club. So we're talking about kids that haven't even made it to high school yet.
Yeah.
And they have this interest in doing this. And I have noticed it. I had noticed it at the high school level a couple years ago where there was an interest there. And I've gone and spoken at Columbia College in the last couple of years that they have a podcasting class. So you're starting to see it happening. But I was just surprised that the younger kids are thinking about doing this right now. And it makes sense to me because they have short attention spans.
Yes.
And podcasts are short attention span theater, essentially.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like perfect example. I'll tell you this. I do one of my podcasts I do is Sox in the Basement. It's a White Sox podcast. There are too many White Sox podcasts. They're terrible. They're a terrible baseball team. I can't believe that anybody would want to listen to a White Sox podcast. There's got to be 30 of them in the market. And we just ended up on a list where we were like the top White Sox podcast, according to millions.com. And it just came out like about a week or two ago. And I started doing mine in 30-minute blocks. And everybody else was doing a 2-hour Joe Rogan type thing where they were sitting around doing it. And I was like, these things have to be quick. And now I worry that 30 minutes is too long. So when these kids are developing these shows for you, I would imagine their brains think that way. Like, we just got to do something really fast and move on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We are, while we were rough drafting, we got our heads together and thought of what would be a realistic time frame to keep everyone's interest in it while we're recording and while we're broadcasting, etc. And we came up with a mark of like 3 to 5-ish minutes for our first trial run. Yeah. And we'll build from there. Like, this is very new to myself as well as all of the kids. So we're kind of learning as we go. We're in it together. They're teaching me a lot. I'm hoping I'm teaching them something. And yeah, as I said, we'll just build from there and hopefully progress and build something great out of this.
What types of shows do they want to do? Because podcasts, you can do anything.
Yeah.
Do murder mystery. You can do what we do here where we're covering stuff that's in the area. You could do like a sports one, like one of my other ones. I have a professional organizer that talks to our clients on there, the Your Organized Life podcast. I got a guy who sells insurance. That's what he does to companies. He's been running a podcast on a network called the Zmar Podcast and talks about his scuba diving, his time on an aircraft carrier, and sells health insurance. And he's got a podcast where, like, everybody's got a podcast with a subject. So what are the kids picking?
Yeah, so I struggled with this when we started. I didn't know which direction we wanted to take, which kind of show we wanted to run, but I applied what I like to do as a teacher, which is the philosophy of letting kids be themselves. So I came up with a script sheet, an outline, a draft, if you will, gave it to them and just said, let me see what you got. So one group, we broke up into like groups of 4. One group came up with a segment where they're going around the school asking staff and other students' thoughts on school rules, school procedures, what they think those should look like, who should have a voice in those, etc. So
those are your Change the World podcasts,
exactly,
right there, right?
Yeah.
Like they're the ones that are going to make an impact.
Yeah,
right.
We have another that a really close group of friends where they just kind of build off conversation. It's very relatable, very fun, very loose. Another group is getting involved in a variety show type thing where they're asking each other trivia questions and going off into banter from there. And then we have one last group that is our interview segment where they'll pick a staff member of students, interview them, just ask them general get to know you questions. Maybe if we have a big sports game, big basketball game, what have you, they'll interview a player who performed very well in that game. They're pretty open. So the way I like to describe our club is it's not the traditional kind of podcast. It's more of like a variety show in podcast form. You're going to get a little bit of everything with these kids. They're very creative, very driven, very smart, and I feel like they're going to turn out a great product.
Are they doing just audio? Or are they trying the video? What are they doing right now? Because you have a video background, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Correct. Yeah. Right now we're just getting involved on the audio side. We're keeping it very.
That's good. Keep it simple.
Yeah, for now.
I use the cameras now, and they drive me nuts. So they look cool. They're 4K. It's kind of fun to show everybody the bar down here, but still, I'm like, it's some extra work, that's for sure. And so it makes it a little bit more complicated too. So yeah, stick with audio, I would say.
For now, I mean, yeah, like anything, there's always room for growth. So if this turns into a video as well, segment, that'd be great. If maybe we have certain video clips that we could put on school social media, that would be great.
Well, I keep thinking of that Channel 1. Remember when you were younger? A lot of the schools had that.
Yeah.
And before class started, they'd have like television and they'd be doing like news.
Yeah.
And there are some schools that have audio visual clubs that will actually produce their own news for their school. And I keep thinking to myself, like, this would be perfect. Like once this club gets rocking and rolling, I mean, you could have as part of the club just a show that talks about what's going on at the school for the kids. You know what I'm saying? Run by the kids. That'd be kind of cool.
Get out of my head. That's my long-term goal. It's I eventually want to merge with newspaper.
Yeah.
And have the school's news run through us as well as the paper. So we'd have that print area covered, and we'd also be able to deliver the news through audio means as well.
Yeah. Now, the one thing you got to worry about is you got to worry about the first Chris Lanuti in your club, because when I started in radio, man, they had to reel me in. I was wild. I said whatever I wanted to. I was trying to get attention. I mean, you're going to get a kid like that. You're going to get somebody who gets on the mic and he's like, watch me say something controversial. Are you nervous about that? Because trust me, if you would have met me as a kid, you'd be like, I don't know if we want him in this club.
Chris, you're talking to a 6th grade teacher. I've met every kind of kid you can imagine. I'm fully prepared, fully battle tested for that obstacle.
Okay,
if it were to even come up, yeah.
Good. Because you're going to run into one. You're going to run into one. It's going to be like, I am going to throw some light on everything that happens around here, and I'm going to say something ridiculous to see whether or not I get a laugh. Like, that kid is out there because he's me. So you're going to find him.
I know that kid.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Believe me, I know that kid.
All right. So it's got to be just cool to be doing something new, right? Like you have, like you can have a chess club, but there's been a chess club probably for like 30 years, right? This is something really new, and you've got to feel like after it gets going, it's going to get bigger because other kids that didn't join it at first are going to see what's going on, listen to what's going on, and dive into it. So it's got to be exciting right now, not only for you, but for the original core group that's putting this club together.
It's very exciting, and they're very much aware. They're very, very bright kids. They're very much aware that they're in on the ground floor. And I think this group that we have in particular likes that there's not the, like you said, like it's not like the traditional kind of club. There's not like tried and true methods that work. Like we're all just kind of throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. And I think they're very excited about that aspect of it.
Yeah. And so now, and you gotta, the thing is, you got this thing started, the school year is going to end soon. So, I mean, like, what's the goal just to get done before they leave for the summer? Like, what do you hope to get here in the last couple months?
We're hoping to produce our first episode.
Okay.
It's been rough because we meet on Fridays, and there have been a lot of events that have kept us from meeting on Fridays, half days, conferences, etc. So we're gonna hit the ground running again this coming Friday. Hopefully record, hopefully cut within the next couple of weeks, and then blast out our first podcast episode. If we could get another one in, that'd be great. But right now, the goal for this year is 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna. I didn't tell you this ahead of time, but if you want to use the studio at all, it's free.
Excellent.
All right. They're welcome to come down here. I mean, if you watch this video, if the video ends up on YouTube of this interview, like most people are going to hear this audio wise, but we do throw things up on YouTube. You'll see the microphones that are down here. These RE20 microphones are the same things that they would get at WGN Studios. So if they want to kind of experience that down here, it's available to. I charge everybody else a lot of money to come down here and record the studio. Sure. You're free, okay? For the kids, they're free if they want to come down here and use it. So you could use that as an incentive too. You know, you guys do a good job. Somebody's going to get to go down and do their show at the actual Broadcast Basement Studios, and they'll get a kick out of it. And we'll video them and stuff like that. And they can hit all the buttons. Not all the buttons. Some of the buttons. They can hit. You're right. They are 6th grade kids.
Yeah. You got to have set expectations coming into this. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Charlie, good luck to the group. I'm excited about this. I got to be honest with you. Like,
thank you.
When I heard about you guys doing this, it got me excited because, you know, I started off in broadcast radio, doing talk radio in the mornings at many different stops around the country. And originally I was going to be a newspaper person, and I got into radio and I fell in love with it. And it's all I wanted to do. And this was new to me, the podcasting thing. Like, I did podcasting almost out of necessity. I said, you know, I'd like to start my own company. I know how to do this. I did a lot of research in it, and I had like a goal, and it took a lot of time to get it put together and started. But to see kids excited about podcasting when I wanted to be on the radio is mind-blowing to me. It really is, right? Like, when I was a kid, I laid next to the radio and imagined myself being the DJ.
Sure.
I get a kick out of the fact these kids are like, forget radio, forget television. I want to be a podcaster. Charlie, I'm not kidding. I go out on a date and a girl asks me what I do for a living. I'm like, oh, I'm a professional podcaster. Half of them want to leave right away. But there's hope for the next generation because they think it's cool.
They're in.
I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. Charlie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's the EP Podcast. All things Evergreen Park. It's the EP Podcast. Evergreen Park.